When I bought my automotive repair shop a few years ago, I made some serious mistakes. Today, I'm going to tell you my top 5 mistakes that I made. And looking back, hindsight is always 2020. I could have done a lot of things different. Let me share my shame. So, about a week ago, I made a video, and the video was titled something to the effect of Why I Hate Owning an Auto Repair Shop. Because for the last at least 2 years, I've absolutely hated it. And when I say hated it, I'm the boss, and on Sunday afternoons, I start getting down because I got to come to work. So for the last year, I had my shop up for sale. I've had 3 different people come out and look, and for whatever reason, each one kind of fell through. One guy maybe was kind of a flake. The second one was a his and her couple. She was going to run the front. He was going to do the work. Would have been perfect. But they had some hiccups on their credit, and the landlord and them couldn't get together quick enough to decide how to overcome that. The third one I really thought was going to happen, and then a week ago Saturday, a week before I filmed the video, they sent me a text that said we couldn't make a deal with the landlord. I spent that weekend devastated. I was just so out of it. I consider myself a Christian. I do pray. I don't tell the world about what I pray about, but I bet I prayed 1,000 prayers in the last month over this shop. And you know what happened? By Sunday afternoon, I started feeling okay. And I was glad. Now, the funny thing is, my mechanic had given his notice in anticipation of the sale and got another job. So last Sunday, I find myself with a mechanic that's only going to be here for a week, and surprise, you still own the shop. So luckily, through a friend of a friend, my mechanic found me a great referral. He's been here with me now for a week. It's been working out. And I'm kind of at peace with owning a shop. I made that video kind of going through all of that, and I don't know why, but that video just blew up. It's probably the most successful video I've made. But now I want to kind of tell you, like Lucas does with his films, Star Trek or Star Wars, the third one came out, so I told you all that to say I made a video about why I hate it and that I wanted to get out of it, and now I'm at peace with it, and I really am. But I wanted to go back and kind of explain when I bought it, the mistakes that we made that probably set the tone for a lot of this frustration. And as you know, when you look back, you see things so much clearer. But if you haven't seen that first video, Why I Hate Owning a Transmission Shop, I'm going to link it up here. You can click that link and watch that video. Even though that video came out first, this is kind of the precursor to what's going on. So if you want to see that one, click up there and it'll show you that video. Now, on to what we could have done better. So the background is I had a friend that owned a shop already. He wanted a second shop. He didn't quite have enough capital. He invited me in. At that point, I was a minority partner. And we took over this shop, I want to say in 2018. And yeah, there's definitely some things we could have done better. So the industry I was in when I worked on a W-2 job before I started working for myself selling cars, a no-compete agreement was fairly standard. And I told my buddy before we signed anything, dude, he needs to have his people sign a no-compete. All right. The sale contract stipulated a no compete for the owner, and that was fine. He wanted out of the industry. But he was not the front man of his company. He let another man run the front of the house because the owner wasn't a super social guy. So there was the fellow George, good guy, ran the front of the house. Now, oddly enough, George's son was the technician. So I had told my buddy, we need no competes from these guys. And for whatever reason, he didn't believe me, didn't take it seriously, whatever it was. So that's the first step. We should have had no compete agreements. Now, I'm here in Texas. Texas, you can do a no compete. You can't do one globally, like you'll never work in this industry again. But you can do a no compete that says you won't work within 20 miles of this location or in this county or this city, a small geographical area for a period of time. And we really should have gotten that no compete agreement. You'll know why in a minute. So, a few months into owning the shop, I don't remember exactly what had happened. I think there was some construction on the off ramp, on ramps by us. Business had slowed a little bit. And my buddy calls me one Saturday and says, "Hey, I should have consulted with you before I did this, but I fired George." I'm like, "Why the beep would you fire George?" "Well, he makes too much money. He makes way too much money for what he does." I don't remember what George was making at this point, and that's not the part that's important. So, what we should have done with George instead of firing him, and what we should have done with the person we replaced George with, was he should have been heavily, heavily bonused on performance. Lower that base pay and then bonus him for, gross volume, gross profit, net profit, whatever you want. But a heavily bonused program to incentivize him to continue to help grow the business. That way, if he makes more money because we made more money, and the labor burden would have been less. But we didn't do that. Instead, we fired him. And then we hired another fella that a friend of a friend knew from my buddy. And he was all right, but not the most ambitious fella. I don't want to say he was here just to collect a check. He wasn't. But, he was not a sales growth oriented fella. And that's what you need in that role if you're going to hire a service advisor. So that's the second thing that we really should have done differently. By the way, if you don't mind, leave me a comment down below. I don't care if the comment is the glare off the light on your bald head is blinding me, but let me know. Did you just see this pop up on your YouTube homepage? Was it in your suggested videos? Have you Googled me? Have you been following me all along on the car lot side? I'd really like to know where these new views are coming from. All right, the next thing that I didn't really snap to until after we bought the business was we should have looked at the books a lot harder. Now, I want to clarify, I am in no way saying that the person that we bought the shop from was dishonest. Hardly. I think he was totally above board. But, I got a brief look at the books before we closed, basically some Excel spreadsheets. And then my buddy and I met for lunch not long after we bought the shop, and we looked at the books a little bit more. Here's some things that I found that I'm going to recommend to you that you probably already know, and I was just too stupid buying my first existing business. So at the same time that we were buying the business from the owner's property was being sold to another party. So in the course of a month, we bought the business and we got a new landlord. Okay? So when you look at the books for what our projected expenses would be versus what his were projected to be, they were a little bit different. And here's some of the things that I noticed. Right out of the gate, the top line business was better than we were achieving. I don't know if that was because people knew that he sold the business. I don't know if that was because of the construction that started at about the same time. I don't know. But what I do know is the old fella's rent was $1,500. Our rent was $2,500. It's still a good deal. I'm not complaining, but it's $1,000 more. Next, on his P&L, I noticed no insurance. So nothing if the building burns down. Employees were 1099, so there wasn't any workers' comp or anything like that. But no insurance at all. The third thing I didn't really snap to until after the fact was this owner worked a position in the shop. He was their transmission builder. So when a transmission came in, he built it. Now, we had to hire a transmission builder that we were using with my buddy's shop and my shop. And that was on a per unit piece, $425. So every time we sold a transmission, we had $425 more expense in the job than the previous owner. Also, he was the second technician if there was a lot of work in the shop. He would go out in the shop on the bay and do repairs as well. We had to pay someone to do that. So, depending on how many transmissions you were building and what kind of volume you had, that was substantial savings. Now, it falls to the bottom line as profit, and he takes that home, but there's not a spot on the P&L. So when you're looking at the P&L, you've got great numbers and you think there's great profit that are not necessarily what you're going to get because you will have to pay someone out. And then the final piece to that is we should have requested the P&Ls from his Schedule C on his tax return, just to trust but verify. We didn't. I'm not saying that anything was mischievous. I don't believe it was. What I believe is we didn't snap to the extra expense that we would have when we took over. This mistake, this one hurts. And it's a serious issue. I think a lot of businesses are overly optimistic about it. We started out undercapitalized. My buddy and I, we each had put in money to pay for this shop, to pay the owner, and we were supposed to start making monthly payments a couple months in for a balance. And we were supposed to take over at the first of the year. I want to say that was 2019. I could be wrong. But the previous owner was excited to get out. My buddy was excited to get in. So he closed the deal actually, like I want to say the middle of November. Right out of the gate, all the money we had for this business goes into the buying the owner out. And guess what? It's a slow time of the year. There's not much coming in. Payroll coming out. Closed for the holiday. Rent's due. And it was just a behind the gun from the get-go. And it seemed like piecemeal, we were each putting in $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 because we weren't smart enough to have float money in the account. Now, I had a car lot. I started selling cars from this location. I was forever writing a check from this account, paying in advance for my repairs for my car lot so that we would keep the shop going. And that was frustrating and sad, and the whole situation just was not working out like we had hoped that it would. Now, when I say in retrospect we're getting what we deserved, absolutely we're getting what we deserved. I own that. When I think about how this shop has changed my life and not necessarily the best way, you know what? It really probably wasn't the shop. It was my decision making for a period of time. And I have regrets, I have sadness, I have embarrassment, and I look back at it and wish I could undo it. But what I keep telling people, and when I pray, it's where do we go from here? Well, I can tell you right now where we go from here is on to my next mistake. Now, I'm going to go all Dave Ramsey on you here. Dave Ramsey had a phrase I heard and I didn't understand until I did. You know what the only kind of ship is that doesn't float? That's a partnership. And let's just say that I had no business being in this business. I put in some money, I had a chance to get out, and I didn't, and now I own it. And you know what? I spent the last couple of years upset about owning it, but for the last few weeks, after this last sale went bad, I have become at peace, and I'm okay with it. And I've sort of re-energized myself and recommitted to this. But the only ship that doesn't float is a partnership. And I have nothing against the fella that I was partners with. You know, as I mentioned in that other video, go back and watch it. I think it's a pretty good one. It certainly has sparked commentary. But the only ship that doesn't float is a partnership. We were about 6 months in together. I didn't really care for the way he wanted to do things. He didn't want to hear that I didn't want to care about the way he did things. We just had some serious opposing views. We also had then realized a lot of these things that I talked about in this video. I think we overpaid for the business. It wasn't making the money that we were hoping it was. And we came to the question of, do we give this back to the other fella as he had a lien? Or is one of us buying the other one out? And my buddy was pretty straightforward. I want out. This is not what I want. I want to cut my loss and move on. So I paid him some money, not what he put in over the period of time for sure, but he made the mistake too. So I paid him out because I didn't want to lose the money that I had put in. And in retrospect, when I look at what I had put in over the last several years, I probably would have been smart to let the business go back. There wouldn't have been any hits to my personal credit. I would have lost some money, but I could have taken some money that I had and gone and opened another car lot and been just fine. As it is now, this property houses our transmission shop and my car lot, and I'm okay with it. Luckily, my buddy and I, we got out of this still friends. But would I ever do a partnership again? I always had said no partner, no partner. I never wanted to take on a partner. Why I was willing to be taken on as a partner for my money, I don't know. But lesson learned. So if you are in a partnership and it's working great for you, God love you. I was not smart enough to set the right situation up to be a partner, and I've learned from it, and I'm at peace from it. And if you want to go back and see that other video, it'll be there. And I appreciate y'all watching. Give me a like, a subscribe. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks again.